just for a few moments? A couple of moments ago, you were praying Psalm 16 together, and you guys all said, because I heard you praying together, Lord, you are my portion, you're my cup, you are all that matters to me. You're the most important thing in my life. That's what that means. Now I got a question for you. You said the words, do you believe it? And how far would you go to make that clear that you really believe it? Here in America, where we were once immune from just about everything and anything, we are now quite familiar with the idea of our temples being torn down and not one stone left upon another. In my heart of hearts, I kind of believe that Jesus walking down with this group from the Upper Galilee, these small town folk, coming to the big city of Jerusalem, and they see this massive, intensely huge, impressive structure. The tiniest little fraction remains today, what we call the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. This incredibly large, 2.5 times the complex of the Rose Bowl, to put it aside. And they're walking around, and he's talking about this place being torn down and not one stone left on another. And I'm sure if any one of us were walking down Wall Street on September 10th, 2001, and one of the street folk were walking around and saying, America, repent, because this wall can come tumbling down, staring at the Twin Towers, you would have done what I would have done. You would have crossed the other side of the street. You would have made fun of them. How easy our walls and towers can come down. The public ministry of Jesus is coming to an end, and he arrives in Jerusalem with his closest inner group, and they see this incredibly impressive structure. And all I can think about, since I'm in the city so much, and those of you who travel to New York, Ron, you're going to love this, because I'm sure you've had this experience. And I know you would be the kind person who would never react to it. But you know, you're walking, trying to get from hither and yon, and you got the couple from Kicktacau, Wyoming, who are kind of wandering in Manhattan for the first time, and they stop and they stare up at the buildings like they've never seen a building over 4 stories, because they haven't never seen a building over 4 stories. And of course, they don't come equipped with brake lights, so you don't know when they're going to do it, and bang, you walk right into them. Have you ever had that happen to you? Yes. Are he and I the only two? Yeah. All right, Steve. Same thing. Okay? Yeah, a bunch of country bumpkins staring at a place that really was impressive. All right, put it in perspective how big this place was. When you're looking at those remaining stones of the Wailing Wall, if you ever watch on TV, keep this in mind, all right, perspective. Each of those stones are 12 meters by 3 meters. Each of them weighs about 50 tons. So do the math on that. That's 100,000 pounds per stone. Held together by gravity. They don't even need mortar or cement or anything of that sort. And fits so well together that as you watch, people even 2,000 years later, when they put their prayer letter inserted, it works. They have to work hard to get it inserted in. That's how beautiful and impressive this place was. And yet, it comes crashing down. The language of the first reading that Sharon read from the book of the prophet Daniel, this is something Jesus taps into it. It's descriptions of what life will be when God finally recalls his creation. And the language is the language of people who are poor and the language of people who are oppressed. And they are looking for justice in their life, people who have been conquered over and over again. And when Daniel writes about these horrible, terrible things, he is reflecting a time when there was this crazed Syrian ruler who basically wanted to put a statue of himself into the temple of Jerusalem. He desecrated the temple and made it a place where he would be worshipped, and it caused a civil war. And so many centuries later, basically 10 years after Jesus had lived and died and rose, the Emperor Caligula, who was a really sick puppy. I mean, I have heard it said, Caligula was so sick, demented, and evil that by comparison, Hitler was like Mother Teresa, if you were to compare the two. And Caligula wanted to put a statue of himself in there and basically be worshipped. And fortunately, thanks to the fact that people were absolutely outraged over the fact he married his sister, they decided to kill them all off, and he was assassinated. So that event never happened. But within a couple of decades, unfortunately, the anger and the hatred that was fermented from all of that bled into a civil war where the Jewish state against the Roman Empire was not a civil war. They basically were squashed like a bug. I use the example, it would be kind of like if John Jay's basketball team played a professional team. You notice I said I didn't say the Knicks, I said a professional team. All right. And all you really need to know about how awful that moment was, then Jesus is reflecting the imagery of that when he speaks of this. When the end came and 2 million people fled into the city of Jerusalem, 97,000 came out to be prisoners of war, to be taken away. And the remaining 1,900,000 were killed, either from the battle itself or from disease or starvation. Temples are torn apart. No one can imagine. So let me ask you a question. We have much to be thankful for at Thanksgiving. Most of us have more than we realize. None of our lives are perfect. But what are the unshakable temples in your lives? What are the things you think, the massive stones you believe, are never going to be torn down? What do you put your faith in? Who do you put your faith in? Is it salary? Is it your IRA or your pension plan? How rich do you need to be or have to be? Is it your professional accomplishments? I've got letters after my name. I don't dare use them. I don't care. They don't define who I am. Is it your health? How quickly that can be taken away? I shared this with the people of St. Paul's, but some of you may know this. We have a member of St. Paul's, Ron Pilger, who's in the hospital, and he had developed a very serious infection, and now he's in a nursing home facility. And I went to visit Ron yesterday, and it wasn't visiting Ron, but as I walked down the corridor to his room, in the room next to him is a priest that I knew from high school. He wasn't a teacher of mine. I've never had his class. Monsignor Frank Boyle, who when I'm a high school kid, I'm a sophomore in high school, I'm basically, he's this god-awful ancient old man. He had to be, 35, 40, Now he's close to 90, at least. And obviously, I never had him in class, so there was no reason why he'd remember me or recognize me. The point is, he didn't recognize anyone. His health is gone, his mind is gone, his body is gone, the journey is almost over. I'm so glad people are taking care. I stopped in and gave him a blessing. But our health can go so quickly. Everything we think that's permanent can go so quickly. And I'm not trying to depress you. I'm trying to put us in a position to understand, number one, for whatever we have, when you have this, as your life is being lived, as you walk the journey, be grateful. Not just on the fourth Tuesday or Thursday of the month of November. Be grateful. When you put your faith in any human structure, whether it is a thing or a person, I can guarantee you certainty and consistency and comfort will not survive. People have told me they like the way I preach. That's good. I'm flattered. Thank you. But don't come here because you put your faith in any priest, me or anyone. You put your faith in God, in the Lord who walks with you. The language of Jesus that he uses is called apocalyptic. It's meant to be frightening. It is. It says temples will tumble. And all of us at some point in our lives are going to experience trouble and heartache and pain, and there is nothing that can be done to take it away. But Jesus never promised us a problem-free life. What he did say is, I will walk with you. And the reality is, put your faith in the one who calls you to himself forever. She's okay. This is her church. You want to walk around? Let her walk around. Christ himself only tells us, I am with you, that faith is greater than death, and love is the most powerful of any force. And hope will be greater than suffering. And our relationship with Christ is not supposed to just endure over the hard times or persevere over the hard times, but know that we will triumph. Because faith and hope and love is greater than anything that we can build or that can be built against us. So I'm going to do something that I would fail my students for doing if they were in my canon law class at the seminary. I've lifted someone else's work. Okay? For those of you in high school, you do not ever do this. Thank you very much. It's called plagiarism. Right, Mimi? Yeah, okay. No, that had nothing to do with Mimi. She's just agreeing with me. Okay, I want to make that very clear. Okay. So I found a prayer, and it spoke to me, and I end the sermon with these words. They're written far better than anything I could write. Lord, when the temples of our lives tumble, when certainties dissolve into confusion, and we wonder where to turn. Ground us in the one resource of faith. Help us know that we are equipped not only to survive, but to prosper, bearing witness to your presence and power in the world when so often you are so difficult to behold. Send us signs of your loving presence. Make us signs of your loving presence. And bless us with the evidence of your grace.